Step into the time machine. Let's travel through the past. Mr. Gold's gonna take you on a history blast. From ancient civilizations to the world wars. Get ready, hold tight.
Hey guys, in this video I want to go over the impact of the transatlantic trade that was started in particular by Columbus. So we're going to look at the Columbian Exchange and how it impacted Old World Europe and then the New World, which was the Americas. So a little background, the Columbian Exchange refers to the period of extensive biological and cultural exchange between the Old World and the New World. When we talk about biological exchange, we talk about the movement of humans, the movement of animals, earthworms, plants, seeds, diseases. All these things were brought across the ocean when the trade began. And then when we talk about cultural exchange, that's really heavily focused on the religious exchange, the bringing of Christianity to the Americas, the bringing of awareness about Native Americans and Native Mexicans to Europe, and the different cultural interactions that occurred there. So it really began in 1492 when Columbus did his first voyage, and then this exchange goes on through the 17th century. So it's going to go all the way until almost the Industrial Revolution. So some interesting facts about this exchange. Before the Columbian Exchange, the European population was recovering from the Black Death, the Black Plague, and they weren't really growing that fast population-wise. But by the 18th century, after the Columbian Exchange had been going for 400 years, the population went from 60 million to about 190 million. So you see the population tripling in that time period due to an increase in access to food and better living conditions due to the resources that were exchanged. The second big fact, this is sort of the opposite of the first big fact, but the indigenous population of the Americas experienced a drastic decline following the European conquest and the European exploration. So there was a spread of diseases, and the estimation is that it's so hard to tell because they didn't have censuses and population statistics, but it's estimated that the population fell between 50 and 100 million people. So it's hard to say exactly, but by the end of the Columbian Exchange, there was only about 5 million Native Americans left in the mid-1600s. So depending on how many started, if it was 50 million, they lost about 45 million people. If it was 100 million, they lost about 95 million people. Another interesting fact relates to silver. So it was estimated that hundreds of thousands of tons of silver were mined from the Americas and transported back to Europe, and then through Europe they were transported to Asia. So China ended up with a lot of the silver due to the trade along the Silk Road and through the ocean trade with Europe, and they ended up using it as their currency. It became the standard medium of exchange in China. Some ships were reported to have sunk from how much silver they were carrying, so you can just imagine the wealth that was generated by this silver exploitation from the Americas to Europe. And then finally, sugar. The establishment of sugar plantations in the America led to forced migration of African slaves. Because sugar is so hard to farm, it's usually done in really tropical hot climates with lots of moisture, which is the perfect breeding ground for malaria and mosquitoes. So because it was such hard work, the people that owned the land didn't want to do that work themselves, so they acquired and brought in African slaves to the European-owned and the Brazilian plantations of sugar in particular. So slave trade was a big part of the sugar production at this time as well. So the impact on the Old World, the Europeans in the Old World, they got things such as sweet potatoes, regular potatoes, tomatoes, corn, and this led to an explosion in population. So Ireland, for example, their population doubled in the 100 years following the start of the Columbian Exchange. Also, they brought diseases such as smallpox and measles to the Americas. So it's not really a fair trade. Europe gets potatoes and corn and a healthy population, and then the Americas, they get smallpox and measles. And then the Columbian Exchange also brought domesticated animals like horses, cattle, pigs to the Americas. So that is one good thing for the Americas. Is if you look at our country now, we have so many cattle farms and pig farms that would never have happened if we were still isolated from Europe. And then the big ones, tobacco and chocolate. So I was just reading that last year cocoa prices have more than doubled because people, even 600 years later, are still addicted to chocolate. And also tobacco. The introduction of tobacco in the Columbian Exchange had a significant impact on the global population. Imagine how the world would be different if Europeans never got their hands on tobacco and cigarettes, and it just stayed in one place. Now the tobacco industry is worldwide, and it's affected billions of people. So tobacco and chocolate were two major crops that were brought to Europe due to this trade. So yeah, the economic the consequences long term. It established the global trade networks that we use today, especially the waterways. It brought the rise of mercantilism. So people would invest in these ships that were crossing the ocean, and if it was successful, they would get a lot of money in return. They would bring back the goods to market in Europe, and it would create a thriving economy in the European markets. When these new goods come, everybody would want to buy them. Think of like shipping and Amazon and all that stuff today. It was like the slow version of Amazon. And the exploitation of natural resources was another big economic consequence. You have slavery, you have mining, you have deforestation, you have spreads of diseases. So it really changes the natural environment, some ways for the better, many ways for the worse. And then the cultural exchange. So it brought together new ideas, new technologies, artistic styles from both regions, from one to another. And then the spread of Christianity from Europe to Latin America. If you go to Latin America today, you'll see a large percentage of people from Mexico all the way down to Argentina are Roman Catholic due to that conquest by the missionaries. And in short, the three motivating factors for the exploration, historians love to say, God, gold, and glory. So they came to bring what they called is bringing God to the Americas. They went there in search of gold and glory to bring back to Europe. So that was the main motive. If you wonder why would they embark on such a dangerous journey across this giant ocean to go to this unknown land, it was those three reasons were the major causes. So if anyone ever asks you on a social studies test, why did Columbus go to the Americas? It was mainly for those three things: God, gold, and glory. And then you can add some spices in there as well that he was looking for. But yeah, that does it for the Columbian Exchange. I hope this information was helpful and you can use it to master this unit.
Step into the time machine. Let's travel through the past. Mr. Gold's gonna take you on a history blast from ancient